Okay, today's lesson basically had to do with finding out if you can graph proportional relationships. Basically, I'm looking at a chart and I'm looking to see if what's happening with my top number is the same thing as what is happening with my bottom number. Notice that they've also been pretty tricky about this, that they've put x over y. When we get to slope of a line, it's going to be the other way around. It's going to be y over x. So this is a big trick that they like to do on tests, is to put it this way, and then students kind of get it confused when they're asked to look at the slope of the line. For right now, we're just going to look at this proportion. So let's say that I have the numbers 1, 2, 3 for my top, and I have 2, 4, and 6 at the bottom. Okay, we want to know if this is going up in a proportional fashion. Okay, and basically, can both of the numbers, if I went backwards, get to 0? Okay, that sounds a little weird. Okay, we're going to look at what the relationship is with the top numbers. To go from 1 to 2, I think you'll agree with me that you added 1. To go from 2 to 3, again, you added 1. If I go one step backwards with this, if I decided to go in the opposite direction, okay, go in that direction, I would have added 1 to get to 1, if that makes sense. That each one of these going from one step to the other is saying add 1. So the number that had to have been, if I was doing my chart in this direction, adding a net, we'll put a little line here, adding another number in before, I think you would agree that this would have been a 0. That 0 plus 1 would have gotten you to 1. I hope that makes sense. Okay. This particular number at the bottom, which I think I misstated, excuse me, has its own set of rules that it's following. Okay. To go from 2 to 4, you would add 2. To go from 4 to 6, again, you would add 2. So this is following this particular pattern that all of the bottom numbers, as I'm moving forward, I would be adding 2. Again, if I went backwards, you'd have to agree that whatever happened here, I had added 2 because this is the pattern that I'm following. Okay, so if I go backwards, what number would I have had that I added 2 and cut 2? Wow. Okay, that would be 0. Okay, 0 plus 2 is 2. Now, it's pretty important that these two, that you're able to get the two numbers back to 0, 0. Okay, if they don't go back to 0, 0, it is not proportional. We'll get into that a little bit more with the actual graphing of it. Okay, so if you're looking at a graph that someone is making, that is a horrible line, sorry, and you have your amount going up here, like we said, each one of these. Now this would technically be your y, and this would be your x, if you remember. Our x's are going up by 1, so we would have our 1, 2, 3. And our y's are going up 2, so this would be 2, 4, 6. I think you'd agree that this right here would be 0 for y, and this would also be 0 right there in the corner for x. If you're graphing this, and you can graph that, you have a line, sorry, it's not perfectly straight. If you have a line that is going through 0, 0, it means you have a proportion, that you started with nothing, and that each step that you're moving up is going to be the same amount, that I'm going over 1 and up 2, over 1 and up 2, over 1 and up 2. You're actually going to get what looks like a little set of stairs if you've done this correctly. If when you do this, sorry about the phone being off a little bit here, if when you did something like this, for example, and you ended up getting something where your line is going through here, it doesn't reach 0 at the same time. I'll show you in a second. Okay, this is not a proportion. So visually looking at this, if it goes through the origin, 0, 0, it's a proportion on a graph. If it's not going through 0, 0, it's not proportional. It means that we started with something already, that this is up 1 or 2 or 10 or whatever this number is. We're going to get to that when we talk about slope. So for instance, if I'm actually looking at a chart, you're like, what do you mean it's not proportional? If I have X and Y, okay, and we'll leave an empty spot here for this one, and we'll come up, and I had the same thing. I had 1, 2, 3, and this is going up +1, +1, +1 for each time I move over. If I went backwards, I'd get to 0. Cool. If I started with, okay, 3, 4, and 5 down here, they are each also going up +1 to get to the next step. If I go backwards, this would have been a +1. I had a number, I added 1 to it, it became 3. Okay, I think you can figure out that that number would be 2. Okay, so this is not a 0. So down here on my graph, okay, at 0, right here, 0 on my X, I was up 2. That is not a proportion. Okay, so looking at your chart, you can figure out if you can get it back to 0, 0 on a chart, that this one moves so many, and if I go back 1 step or even 2 steps, and I get to 0, then this one I should be able to go back 1 step or 2 steps to the same spot. And if they're not both 0, then it's not a proportion. In this case, it is. This one, they each took 1 step backwards in their numbers. I got to a 0 here, a 2 on that one. This is not a proportion.